Welcome back to another episode of the Dynasty Dingers podcast. We are on to third base. It's been a few weeks. We've done some mock drafts, some FYPD dives, but we are back to the position breakdowns, hopefully getting done before spring training. Pitchers and catchers to report very shortly as we roll into February. Joined as always today by Doc. Doc, what's going on?
Folks, we've been going through it. Technical difficulties. I got a big green hat on.
And now you're on the clock. It's just been
Now I'm on
great.
I just hopped on the clock in the categories league of a 56 round draft we're doing for Scout the Stat Line. It's good. It's fine. I got a cigar. It's beautiful. God is good. I'm happy to be here, man. How you doing today? It's sunny out. It snow's melting. I'm
Honestly,
happy.
I'm happy because we are almost done with these two 30-man startup drafts. And I love drafting, but as any of you that draft in deeper leagues know, and as you and I know, after like round 40, you're ready for it to be over. And Killian went. Yeah, Killian was going to be my next guy for the Chicago
Well,
Cubs.
yeah,
Yeah, it's been good.
I picked Carter Matheson, who now I can talk about because I drafted him in both leagues. He's a Hoosier. He played for IU. I think he's actually from Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I just saw on the combine, he was one of those guys ripping bombs, ripping some high velos, knocking balls far out the park. So figured in the 55th round, we are
55th round.
55th round. You know, it's about time. Look at that. Jake Geloff goes. He didn't go in our other league. Well, but yeah,
He's not been very good.
He's been terrible, and it's not like it used to be. Like last year, I was like, oh, maybe he'll be like his brother. Now I'm like, oh, maybe he'll be like his brother.
Potentially a alternate career coming. Listen, I like Carter. He's cool, but not cool enough. He just falls one day short of our birthday, so we have to root for him, but not as much as we would like to.
Correct.
What do you think you have found to be the biggest differences between the points startup 30-man and the categories startup?
It's interesting. So I think anyone listening who's been in multiple leagues can recognize that culture is everything. It's like the people. It's like I'm doing a stump speech. The people make up this league. It's the people's league. The points league. These guys are like really on it. They wanted just to get through this draft because they're so eager. There's kind of a fun, lighthearted energy for the most part. Whereas the Cats League, there's been a little bit more. It's been like more of a slower pace. Got some guys who are ready to go. Other guys who are kind of straight up pushed back, and we're like, "Hey, everyone, stop! We don't need to go through this. We can take 2 months if we have to." I'm like, "Bro, you're kicked out of the league." No, but it's just certain personalities. One guy's Scott. We have a Scottish guy and a Belgian guy. Shout out to Lewis Analysis. I always want to say Louis. Dude, Louis is the European way to say it. How do we tell him this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge for us, but also we're very, very American, so kind of is what it is.
But yeah, dude, it was. I think both leagues, for me, I approached them kind of the same. Although I was more willing to take risks on batting average. Like I have Nolan Gorman in the category league. I'd way rather swap it out. Like I'd rather have Nolan Gorman in the points league where those ratios. Of course, you will be dinged for strikeouts, but it doesn't look as bad as like a sub 300 OBP.
Yeah, and I think pitching is a big disparity in both leagues in regards to in points. We know pitching is more of a strength, right? You want to have a stronger rotation. You want to really be able to maximize those starts. In categories, you can go with more of a ratio approach and really hammer relievers, especially I think mid-tier 6th, 7th inning guys. If you like the ratios that they're going to give you, yeah, you might lose the volume to some weeks that have really heavy and strong starting rotations. But if you go with that approach in points, you are going to lose. And I think we kind of saw that throughout. Starting pitching went heavier early in points, and in categories, you saw the bats. So I think it was pretty traditionally lined up. We had some trades already made in the points league that just finished, and I kind of wanted to talk to you about that. We briefly touched on that before we started recording today. The first one was very interesting. Players you and I both like a lot. It was Wyatt Langford and Trevor Harrison being traded for James Wood and Sebastian Walcott. What did you think of this trade overall?
Well, I think that Wyatt Langford is going to be the best player from this trade, so that's a mitigating factor. I think that Walcott is more risky than the industry is making him out to be. There's a lot of folks, I believe, James Anderson at RotoWire, think he was the first one to kind
Yeah,
of break the
number
dam,
one.
throw him at number one. Hey, bro, could be a big, fast, strong kid. I like the Rangers, so if it happens, I'll be probably really happy because I'm not sure how much longer Adolis Garcia is going to be good. But you need a big bat in that lineup there, and so I don't know, man. I could also see Walcott having a 30 plus K percentage his whole career, maybe getting too high, maybe he doesn't cut it. Right, James Wood, I think is going to be really good. We were talking before the show. I think that his risk is higher than Langford's, if only for him being 6'7". Football and basketball, the bigger the better, often. But in baseball, you get too tall. Like there can be some concerns about the swing, right? And I'm not really that concerned because Wood has a great eye, so he's going to have a career. But he's probably going to slow down a little, you would think. He is probably not going to have as good of an average as batting average as Langford, who I believe just being 6'1", having that thick, but still tallish frame. I just think he's going to be a more well-rounded player. Maybe we see Wood threatening like 40, 45 home runs. Maybe we see Langford do a little less than that and steal more bags. Because Langford, everyone seems to forget, has 99th percentile speed. And so it's an interesting trade. I think it's a market overpay.
Yeah.
Because Walcott's going for a lot more than that alone. Like Walcott for Langford right now, I wouldn't be surprised if that trade's been made, which is crazy to me, but I could see it almost getting there.
Well, we didn't talk about this, between you and I before we jumped on, and it's the biggest point I think I wanted to make. If this is in categories, I can understand overpaying for Wyatt Langford. I can get it. This was in a points league. So while Wyatt Langford may steal more bags than James Wood, you're not getting the same upside value in a full category with points. Like we have calculated for 2 points per stolen base, which is better than, one in a league that I'm playing in. I know multiple leagues go with one, but say Wyatt Langford does steal 40 bags and James Wood steals 15, but Wood has 15 homers more a season. You're still getting more points from James Wood. I think it's an interesting trade because I think James Wood for Langford in a points league, you're trading potential upside in Wood for the solidified floor that we know Langford's going to be, which should be a first or second round pick. We're projecting throughout his, career into prime, as his career maybe tails off in his mid 30s. Wood could be a top 5 pick, or he could be a guy, as you've said, who maybe he's just an O'Neill Cruz if he doesn't put it together.
Mm-hmm.
Sebastian Walcott added to that as a real overpay, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, for market value, it's an overpay. I think
Yeah.
we could end up seeing down the line if things don't work out quite the way we see them for Walcott and Wood. Like I said, Langford just feels safer, and I think the
Hmm.
Rangers lineup's going to bounce back. So I think he got the best player, but at what cost?
Yeah.
Especially in a 30-man, depth is key.
Well, and for context here, James Wood went 18th, if I remember correctly, overall, and then Langford went 8th or 9th overall. So, there is a bit of a difference in where this individual is drafting in the first round. But also for context, Sebastian Walcott was the number one prospect pick for that individual as well. So they gave up their first round major league draft. They gave up their first round minor league draft to really move up 9 spots in the major league draft. It's a heavy price to
Yeah.
pay. Yeah. Same manager made another trade. So they were busy. They went on and acquired Christian Campbell, Sammy Stafura for the Reds, and then a throw-in for Matt McLean, Spencer Schwellenbach, and Shane Baz. I thought this was another overpay.
Yeah, I mean, probably again, it's the same idea, right? McLean, I'm concerned about his injuries. They're
Mhm.
piling up. People have kind of forgot one guy, another fellow in the industry said, I actually forget, did he have any other injuries other than his most recent? It's a shoulder one most recently, I believe, and then the oblique was before that. Or maybe I'm getting it mixed up with the reverse, but it was a shoulder and it was an oblique. And the oblique took him out for a long time. He seems to keep getting banged up. This could be just two strings of bad luck, but we'll have to watch out. And
Yeah,
so
it
and
was
then
I mean, it was labrum, so I'm not, like I'm not overly concerned with the labrum. The oblique is a really good point, right? That's a soft tissue injury.
I've seen Lars Newbar break my heart too many times with his dang obliques, and so I see obliques, I freak out a little bit internally, and I'm like, no, because the whole thing about folks, if you haven't
It's
played
rotation.
baseball, it's all obliques, and there's a lot of shoulder in it too. Yeah, it's we'll see. I'm not condemning him. I'm just saying there's a possibility McLean's not really a factor. Schwellenbach looks like he's going to be a stud. I don't know. Maybe he takes a step back. We don't know. And Christian Campbell, again, probably the best player here. Again, in either side, like if Langford does just become mid, I don't think so. If Campbell is much more of a chance, like much more of a pop up guy last year. So
Yep.
I would say there's more of a chance that Campbell is just kind of a mid guy than Langford. Then these trades start looking really bad. But
Yeah.
I think he's probably getting the best player in both trades.
And that's interesting, right? I think you made the best comment. If you want your guy, go get him. Well, he's
You
taking
got
some
him.
risk here, but yeah, he's shooting for upside here. If he thinks that Langford's maybe a top 5 pick overall over the next, say, 5 to 7 years, okay, you got him. If you think Campbell's a fringe first rounder, maybe a second rounder, right? If Campbell can become a Jose Altuve, just a simple Hall of Famer, no big deal. Like you've done a great job, but I
Yeah.
do think with the risk involved, giving up two, I would say top 40 projectable pitchers, because I think Schwellenbach is in that top 40 conversation already. Shane Baz is not because he just coming off injury, playing on the Rays, hasn't had the opportunity, but it is an interesting package there. And then we had one final trade. This was a little bit more minor as in comparison to our last two. Chase Burns, a throw in for Carter Jensen, who we love, go Carter, Jordan Romano, and Seth Lugo. So you're seeing essentially two major leaguers that will slide into a starting rotation and a 30-man right away with Lugo and Romano. Presumably a major league starting catcher when Salvi retires. Blake Mitchell will maybe have something to say about that with Jensen. Maybe they're a combo pair. For a second round SP, second overall in the 2024 draft, Chase Burns. I'm actually taking the Lugo Romano Jensen
Mm.
side of this. What do you think?
I see it either way. I don't think Lugo's like about to be washed up. I think he's got bullets in the chamber due to his
Okay.
usage over the years. I think Carter Jensen should be pretty good. If Carter Jensen works out and if he's the guy hitting 20 home runs with a 240, 230 maybe average, but 330 plus OBP in a burgeoning, I haven't used that word in a while, in a burgeoning Royals lineup, uh, I mean, that looks bad. That looks probably pretty good. If you get 3 more years of Lugo, maybe 2, 3 more years of Lugo being really good, Romano becomes a closer in Philly. I could see that being valuable. This Brad Davy guy, I think he's been going all in on. He wants to win year one, so we'll see. Chase Burns is probably the best player. He better be right when you're paying that. Although he did
Yep.
get Shrek, the Green Ogre.
It is interesting.
RJ Shrek was his name, folks. This is a random guy I've never heard of before.
Yeah, and that's just what I throw in for me, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned this individual. I gave him a pretty high grade when I broke down this league. Yeah, like you said, he's going all in, right? He's definitely bolstered up his bench. I mean, Lugo now steps into a rotation with Frankie Montez, Shota Imanaga, Eduardo Rodriguez, Casey Mayas. Like he's really going for it this season, and rightfully so. I mean, again in a 30-man, he's Sean Murphy at catcher, Michael Bush at first, Turang at second, Machado at third, Adames at short, Buxton, who we have our question marks about, but again, this is 30, so there is a question mark everywhere. Has Aaron Judge as his anchor. Leody Taveras as his 3. Another question mark, but it's okay. Again, same logic. And then Dansby Swanson as his utility. So I think getting Lugo, a veteran, as you said, might have 2 years. If we're lucky, maybe 3 left to help in a points league was a pretty good deal. And we just don't know what Chase Burns is. I really like Burns. I think he's going to be a great player, but we haven't seen any minor league numbers yet. So we have to kind of still leave that door open. All right, what do you think? Is it third base time?
I think it's time for third base. I want to get to third base with you, Matt.
I love that. I'm gonna have to check with my wife, but I can't argue what she says. Okay. Easier list today. As those of you that have been following us, you have seen some pop-up guys that STS has created, some guys that Doc and I just didn't know of and now love, right? We talk about Moss a lot at the first base as we stumble across him. But moving to third base, more notable names. And we start off number 1 third baseman for the STS model in 2024 was Matt Shaw. STS has Shaw for a peak projection of a 125.5 WRC plus, batting average at 274, on base percentage 347, a slug of 474, 24 home runs, 20 stolen bases. Now, Doc, I just took him third overall in the categories prospect only mock draft that you and I did with CBS, to some chagrin of other members of this draft. But I love the stolen bases at third. I love the power. I love the average. I think what you get from Shaw is very hard to find at third base. What are your overall thoughts of Shaw?
So first of all, I saw that pick. This is the Scott White, Chris Towers, CBS mock draft. They put those on every offseason. And you went number 3 overall for prospects for the prospect draft. And I just couldn't help but wonder if you would have done that if it was a real draft. Ask yourself the honest truth. Would you have gone Matt Shaw there?
In categories, yes.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I've never seen that. I
Because for
think
me,
go on.
I'll talk you through the logic just because I did think about it, right? Shots at third base or even second base, depending on what happens with Horner over, let's just say, the next 5 years, right? You got to, maybe he moves. I'm looking at him right now, though, as a third baseman to get 20 stolen bases potentially from Shaw, which I think we get for 3, maybe 4 years, is a lot harder to find than what I get out of Dylan Cruz or Jason Dominguez with the risk involved with both of those. I know Cruz is a floor player, right? But I don't like the team context as much. I feel more comfortable being able to find what Cruz gives me in the outfield than I find comfortable what Shaw gives me at third. And lastly, with Shaw, it's a much more shallow position from a prospect perspective. As some of these names we're going to talk about today, I mean, number 4 alone is where we see this massive drop off. But out of all of these guys, Shaw is really the only real third baseman that will steal you more than 10 bases projectably at the major league level, other than Luke Adams. And Luke Adams is light years away from where Shaw is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the scarcity standpoint. It's never been a better time to, like, if you're doing a startup, it's never been a better time to go ahead and bite the bullet and take a ride on the Brock Wilken Express, because after Brock Wilken, it gets real dark. If you think that last year was rough, yeah, there's not a whole lot of upside after that. Matt Shaw, this guy, he's kind of like your all around guy. That's why I think myself and other people are like, really, and I think you could probably agree that his upside is a little capped. Just being, just being 5'9", 185, not particularly explosive as an athlete, just kind of a ball player. I think he's a classic ball player, so I do like him. And I see what you're going for here. If I had to put some rain on the parade, I'm seeing, this is what I've been doing lately, right? I've been calling out caught stealing. So AAA, 6 steals, 3 caught stealing. And if you're seeing the overall numbers, it's 31-11, which is still like a little bit too much, too many times getting caught. But 25 of those stolen bases were at AA. So if those stolen bases dry up, what are we looking at, right? Like if he's more of like a 10 stolen base guy, 20 home runs, what kind of upside is that? Maybe it's 30. I don't know if he's a 30 home run guy. I think what we want him to be is like 20 to 25 home runs, 20 stolen bases. But again, I think people are thinking 25 stolen bases. If he's getting caught like that, it's not going to happen. His ratio should be great. He makes a lot of great contact, and well, he makes a lot of contact, and so his average will be high enough. I think more like a 270 kind of guy. Seems like he's really able to take a walk. So should play just be again an all around grinder at a scarce position. So I like him as a prospect, but for me, there's just guys who I see a little bit more upside.
Well, I think that's the hardest part about when you really look at, because for me, Matt Shaw and Dylan Cruz, I think Dylan Cruz might have marginally better numbers. I think Dylan Cruz can be guaranteed 20 stolen bases.
What was the risk? What was the risk that you didn't actually specify? What was the risk with Jason Dominguez? Because I heard a good case recently for Jason.
I don't know that
Dominguez.
Jason Dominguez is a 250 hitter at the major league level, and if you can't hit me 250, I'm not. Why are you being taken in the first round? Is my opinion. Or let me rephrase that. Why are you being taken in the first 10 picks? We've seen the power played at the major league level, right? In both years, before the Tommy John surgery that he had in 2023, and then when he came back last year in 2024. But last year we started to really see that hit tool and him being overpowered. And I haven't seen the underlying like zone contact and chase rates that he's had throughout the minor leagues, but I just do not believe he can be a conservative, consistent 280, 270 hitter at the major league level. And I absolutely think the speed is going to fall off sooner than later. He's already gotten bigger as he's, grown into his early 20s. So if I think speed's going to fall off, let's say quicker than Matt Shaw or Dylan Cruz, I'm already concerned about an average, which I'm not necessarily concerned with Matt Shaw and Dylan Cruz. You've got two pieces that now I can't take you over Matt Shaw and Dylan Cruz. And then you get to position scarcity. I can find a Jason Dominguez. I can't find Matt Shaw. It's hard to find Dylan Cruz. There's a reason he's ranked where he is. But every FYPD, there is a top tier outfielder out there. This past year, Cam Smith was arguably the top third baseman. And Cam Smith isn't going to steal you more than 3 to 5 bases, maybe any season he plays. So really, for me, it was Cruz, it was Shaw. I think they're going to have similar careers. I do think Cruz probably steals a little bit more, and Cruz probably has a better power prime, but he plays outfield. A lot of outfielders.
I think your best argument is the scarcity. That's like Shaw, Mayo. I'd say Wilkin, and then it's like there's a cliff. I mean, there's even like a pretty big jump I have to acknowledge from Mayo to Wilkin in terms of how last year went.
For me, Cam Smith would fall just above.
Yeah, sorry, my
Wilkin.
apologies. My apologies. Yeah, yeah. So Cam Smith would be he is above Wilkin on my rankings.
Yeah. But that's a big jump, right? Like,
but regardless, we're talking about like a handful of prospects out of the entire minor leagues, entire minor leagues. I would say just because Jason Dominguez, you brought up his zone and contact in the MLB last year, and when he came up, they were actually really good. 87 zone, that's 78 good. Contact, and I would say that you were onto something with the sprint speed that was looking like it was only 64th percentile. Again, as he gets older. What's that look like? So I think that's I think the scarcity and will he steal bases is a good argument. I think the power is going to play. I think
the power plays. I think. I mean, it's hard.
Does it change your mind if Matt Shaw doesn't steal more than 12 bases in his career in a single season?
I just don't think that's going to happen.
Okay.
I don't think he's going to be a guy that steals 20 bases over every year for 10 years. But I think he's a guy that will get 20 bases over his first 3 seasons. If he plays, let's say 140 games, I think he gets 20 stolen bases. Craig Counsell loves to run. And having Shaw, having Horner, those are going to be guys that, push that agenda. Like, you have to think about Craig Counsell coming over from Milwaukee. They hired him to be the same manager with a bigger payroll. Like that way, he is going to continue to do what made him successful, right? Put runners in scoring position, get those runs in. Yes, Kyle Tucker is going to hit home runs. You're going to have more success from some bigger bats, but Counsell's going to allow Shaw to run until Shaw tells him, "Hey, I this isn't a skill set of mine." I think it's a really good point you brought up. 6 stolen bases, 3 caught stealing. My argument to that would be, only without seeing these games. It's later in the season. Definitely better competition, right? There are adjustments on both sides that have to be made. Um, but if you were to tell me that Matt Shaw will never steal 12 bases, more than 12 bases in a season, yes, I take Dylan Cruz there. Okay, so we go from what is probably the safest third baseman to number 2, which is, I think, a complete wild card. We are just moving a little bit north in the NL Central for number 2, Luke Adams. Scout the stat line, third base, 2024, number 2 third baseman. Luke Adams comes in with a peak projection of 117.5 WRC plus, batting average of 234, on base percentage of 364, slug of 410, 19 home runs, 20 stolen bases, 13% walk rate, 23% K rate. And I think it's interesting to note he's had an absolute incredible 2 seasons within Milwaukee at a younger age, coming out of the draft as a prep player with the OBP. In 2023, Adams had a 400 OBP between A ball and just at A ball. And then 2024 in high A, his OBP was 443. So we're seeing the ability for him to get on base, have a great eye. He's a big kid, 6'3", 6'4", has power projection. Has had 11 home runs in 2024 and 11 home runs in 2023, both in about 100 games. Stolen bases in both seasons, had 30 and 23, had 28 and 24. Doc, this is a really interesting profile. You know, the average just is not there. I'm assuming he's not aggressive enough without having watched tape because of that on base percentage. Doesn't tap into that power as much as we would like to see a guy with this body. Has an odd swing, but he comes in at number 2 for STS. So what do you think of Luke Adams?
Well, there's a reason that he's on here and Brock Wilkins not. He knows how to take a walk, and Brock Wilkins actually is good at taking walks, but he wasn't last year. So he can take a walk. He's a 400 plus OBP last 2 years, 443. I'm going to repeat that again, 443 OBP to go with a 227 batting
Yep.
average. So it's like, bro, you can lose 100 points off your OBP if it's going to give you
20.
30 or yeah,
Yeah.
whatever, any amount of batting average. Because yeah, right now he's doing the Harry Ford dance, which
Yep.
is like it's not going to play. You're too passive. It's the Edouard Julian kind of thing. What's it? I'm looking at his contact here. So this is what's encouraging for me. And frankly, even before seeing these contact numbers,
Real quick, what resource are you using this in case the listeners want to also dive into contact numbers?
Fangraphs.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So when I first started doing these podcasts, I would just go off Baseball Reference and like manually, like I would just use a calculator and like figure out their K percentages because I'm just really dumb. Actually, I guess it's like I'm like a weird breed of dumb where like I'm doing something that like takes more brain power than clicking on a screen. But anyway,
I think stuck in your ways of old school scouting
yes,
is probably the best way to put it, right?
yeah, I'm just a boomer. The boomer at heart. He's 20 years old, big body, fast. Like these are things you can't teach, and obviously you can't teach age, folks. But he's got time, is what I mean by how old he is. To maybe just work on that approach, utilize those tools better. So I'm seeing like he's not really worried about a K percentage. His walk percentage is unbelievable. So what I would be interested in knowing is his contact. I don't see the zone contact on here, but you can see in 2022 it was a major problem at complex level. Yeah, pretty young, right? But he had 52% contact. Boom, went way up to like 77 in 2023, and then 79 in 2024. These are good numbers, folks. In case you don't know, those are good contact numbers for Luke Adams. So he's clearly making good contact when he's swinging. He just needs to swing more. So we'll see what that looks like. I am confident the Brewers can also put this math together. So hopefully next year, because he's still young, they can start him again at high A. And frankly, I probably would start him at high A and
Yep.
tell him, hey, go ahead and change your approach here at the
Swing.
safer level and see what happens.
Yep.
But if he refuses to do it, if he's just not doing it, no, chuck him to double A. So he has to learn. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Now you can't afford to be this passive. You're going to start getting exposed. You're going to be forced to be aggressive.
Yeah, I like that. I like that developmental path a lot because you're right. Those contact 76 and then bumping to 79, like that's really encouraging. You could see that drop to, I would say 70. Then that's a concern. Does he reach the majors if his contacts at a 70? But if you start to see that power really jump up and that batting average jump up, I mean, this is, I like to call it the body type. Like this is a linebacker, like big kid, fast. We need to start to see some of those physical gifts really play out. But I would rather a guy have his profile at his age with his projection than a guy that is swinging a lot and is more power with low average. Would you agree? Like, do you think there's more upside here than a guy that's already showing power but just can't seem to hit over 250?
Can you give it? I mean, that is who Luke Adams is. So,
So I guess I would say they're swinging an extensively
oh,
an
I see what
amount
you're
more,
saying.
right?
Yes,
Like
that'd be way more concerning.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're on base percentages maybe a 330, right? So
Yes.
100 points lower than Adams. They're showing some
Yeah.
more power. They can't
I
hit over
actually,
250.
yeah. The more we dig into Luke Adams, the more I'm like, he's been available. Like, where did he go on our drafts? Probably he went late. I know he
I
didn't go that.
I'm biased, right? When we talk about this because I'm a Brewer fan, I genuinely believe there is a slight chance we could have a Kobe Mayo profile in Adams.
He's
It's not.
faster,
He's faster.
way faster.
He's as big. He's a prep bat that was taken late in his year. I mean, I think if I remember, Adams was a 7th round pick. Let me scroll up here on Fantrax. 12th
He went.
round,
Hmm.
26th pick. Like
Hmm.
he's already provided value to the organization. But the
Yeah,
power has to show. The hit tool, I just don't know it'll ever be Mayo's. Mayo's got a pretty good hit tool from where he
it's
started.
okay. It's okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but if he can find a hit tool and find 75% of Kobe Mayo's power, he's already got a better eye. So I think Luke Adams is an absolute go buy him in almost any league just because of these numbers and see what happens. All right, moving on. We are on to the aforementioned Kobe Mayo. It's interesting. I definitely would take Kobe Mayo or over Luke Adams if there was a 1-for-1 swap, but I find it interesting that Scout the Stat Line is giving this order. Kobe Mayo, prodigious prospect. We've talked about Mayo a lot. Where does he play? Does he get traded? Scout the Stat Line oddly has him at right field, so we made some adjustments. He is going to be in the third base ranks because as of right now, he's third base. He may move to first, but we'll see. Peak projection has him at a 125.7 WRC plus, a 261 batting average, significantly better than Adams' projection. On base percentage of 339, a slug of 488, 28 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 10% walk rate, 26% K rate. Talk to me. This is just the traditional third baseman, right? Austin Riley is probably, I think, the current comp I have at a major league level for Kobe Mayo. What are your thoughts on Mayo?
Yeah. I mean, it's almost boring to talk about Mayo now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, It's by the way, I like mayonnaise. I was gonna say boring like mayo, but that's hating on mayo. I'm gonna stop that. You know what? Goes well too. I like ranch with everything. I like mayo. They're very spicy, and so I like Kobe Mayo. I'm still buying. It's a great opportunity. He's not always at like a super discount right now, but I think you're getting way more of a discount than this time last year because Prospect Shine's a hell of a drug. It's Jackson Holiday came up and he didn't rip 30 home runs and hit 300 at the age of 20. Bust. He's just gonna be he'll be okay, but he will never be a star. Says a lot of people right now. And Mayo, the same kind of deal. Also, the fact that it's hard to find playing time on the Orioles right now, but I think they got to go ahead and look. How did things go near the end of last year? Maybe something needs to change. So maybe Kobe Mayo gets an opportunity. He needs to get one earlier this year. I think that there has definitely been some helium deflation. So all it's going to take is for his like incredible power, like 40 home run power, to smash a few bombs in spring training, and I think we might see that helium inflate his stock once more.
His 2024 numbers are interesting, and I think it's a good comparison since we just talked about Luke Adams. Kobe had 4 games at high A. I would imagine it was a rehab stint there. He batted 462 in those 4 games with 3 home runs, an on base percentage of 563. I mean, in all regards, he absolutely dominated. And that's the difference when we're talking about some of these guys. Like at the same level, the ability for Adams to come out and play okay and like give us a really good on base percentage, but the same level, Mayo comes down for just a short stint and shows why he's a top prospect. And then at AAA, excuse me, 22 home runs in about 90 games, hit 287. You know, like he's ready for that next opportunity at the big league level. It's just where does that K rate fall? For Mayo at AAA last year was at 25%. You know, you expect about a 5% increase at the major league level. Well, 30% K rate at the major league level, that's dangerous, but it's okay for a rookie if he's hitting for power. And we need to see that from Mayo in 2025. Good grades. Scott the stat line has him with a 60 hit, 65 power. You know, those that will play. Next on the list, number 4 for the New York Yankees at third base, 2024 STS, Emmanuel Tejada, coming in at age 19, WRC plus peak projection at a 108.6, batting average 268, on base percentage of 336, slug of 416, 17 home runs, 28 stolen bases, 9 walks, 9% walk rate, 22% strikeout rate. Tejada's kind of a guy that's bouncing all over the diamond. He did play more third base in 2024 than he played shortstop. He is listed on STS as a shortstop, so I'm going to toss him into this list. I don't know if he sticks at third, but he's an intriguing prospect at A ball.
So you got to be honest with me, Matt. Did you know who this guy was?
I've heard of Tejada, but
not Miguel.
I've listened. If it's Miguel Tejada, I will happily swap out my Matt Shaw third overall and take Miguel Tejada. No, he was complex over the last couple of years. He had 5 games in the complex in 2024, promoted to A ball, 43 games for the Yankees at A ball, hit 310, had 353 OBP, had a home run. You know, I mean, nothing crazy, but it was the 24 stolen bases at A ball in those 43 games that I really think pumped the model here.
Yeah, and he's not really getting caught stealing, which, as you've noticed, if anyone's listening the last like month, I'm just hitting that home on repeat, and so that's encouraging.
What was his? How many times did he get caught?
So the whole year, 26 stolen to 4 caught. That's fine.
Okay,
it's great.
Yeah.
And so like they'll let you run with that. We'll see how it goes to the upper minors, but I mean his age to level is fine right now, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I mean, comes and walks the same amount of times as he's striking out. And rookie ball in 2023, like, yeah, I mean, this guy seems to, his contact rates they're pretty good. His contact rates weren't good in the complex level in 2023, but they made significant improvements, like 10% improvements more this year, while going up to a higher level. So that's what you want to see, right? You want to see trending in the right direction. Another one of those guys from the Dominican, 5'9", 158. Who knows? You know, I mean, judging by his home run totals, I don't think he's that much bigger. But yeah, this is one of those. Frankly, I guess actually this is very important. I don't think this is a third baseman.
I would say second base future projection.
This screams second base. In fact, I'm looking at his fielding right now. What is this? What am I seeing here? I'm seeing he did 13 games at second base.
Yep.
And I'm seeing
30 at third.
No, he did 19 at third in 2024. So they're still giving him looks there. And again, maybe they see something we don't. I don't know a lot about this kid. But this is someone to put down, right? Put down on your deep 30-man league watch list, right? To see what happens. It's easy to be like, oh, I've never heard of this guy before. The model got something weird, and maybe that's the case. Maybe we never hear about him again, but maybe you're going to get him for free, and this guy comes up and he starts hitting. He just becomes this guy who'd be a good comp. Maybe he's just – there's not a lot of these guys. Caleb Durbin, you know, these guys who just with great hit tools and great eyes and know how to steal a base.
It's funny you say Durbin, you know, we talk about him a lot, but I think he falls into like, we'll call it that bag, right? Where stolen bases are important. And maybe Tejada is more of a second baseman, but maybe he turns into a utility guy that can also play third.
Yeah.
If you can get third base eligibility, as we talked about with Matt Shaw, and you can find a guy that gets you more than 20 stolen bases, that's an incredibly valuable tool. Like if I'm correct, Durbin is he second in short, or is he second, short, and third right now in most leagues, Doc? Like what have you seen for his eligibility
For Durbin,
for Durbin?
Durbin, bro, like I don't even think people know. I got like Lewis is great, love him. He knows his stuff. R. Lewis at Scout Stat Line, Lewis Analysis. But he asked me the other day. He's like, "Oh yeah, Durbin's like, is he second or is he short?" And I'm like, "Bro, he's everything. He's
He's
shortstop,
everything. Yeah.
he's third base, he's second base, and he plays outfield." The Yankees were distributing it evenly, in AAA and at the fall league. So it's like it's for real. Even after he came back from a hand injury, they're like, nope, go back out there. You have to learn everything. And so I think that's if that happens, and our settings for our 30 man, it's great because it's like 5 games. I think gets you eligibility. So that's really useful, and especially
It's interesting because if Durbin stays or keeps that third base eligibility, kind of like we just talked about with Tejada, right? Where Durbin's moved around in Milwaukee for 3 or 4 years. He's the super utility starter. I don't want to see, I think utility gets a bad term. Like utility can also mean
yes,
full-time starter. It can. Bill
yes.
Hall, if anyone remembers that name. And it's like, okay, in 3 or 4 years, let's say Durbin's hitting. I'm gonna give him some credit here. Let's say he's hitting 10 home runs this season, right? Stealing 30 bags. Probably fair. Do you think that's fair in like prime Caleb Durbin year?
Dude, I think Caleb Durbin's going to steal 30 this season. I
Okay,
mean, why would
perfect. So
I think the big difference is between I would say it's different between utility and super utility.
okay,
When we hear super utility, it for me it's like you're playing at
130.
equally to a regular. Basically, you're getting regular playing time. Maybe
Yeah,
that's your when you're not showing up, it's your day off kind of
day off.
thing.
Yeah.
And so I would say that a super utility guy, when done right, could play more than a platoon power bat,
Oh, easy. Yeah,
like a Kerry Carpenter. I mean, more likely to be a short side guy, like a
yeah. I see what you're
yeah,
saying. I see what you're
yeah,
saying. Okay,
but yeah, yeah.
so here's the question then. Without putting a name on these players, you have to pick one profile. 265 with 10 home runs and 30 stolen bases at third base, 265, 10 and 30, or 265, 25 and 5.
That would be a team
Categories.
need.
Categories
That'd be
roto.
you say 10 and 30? I mean,
10 and
and
30 or 25 and 5. Same batting average.
for me it really would depend on my team, but I view those essentially equivalent.
Okay.
I think it yeah, you could argue it's easier to find stolen bases than it is to find 25 home runs.
Okay.
I wouldn't
That's
hold that
fair.
against you. I think that so maybe have me leaning that way. But if I know that sometimes I'm prone to drafting teams of statues like Kerry Carpenter,
Sure.
who got guys who do not run, and so if that's my team, so chuck them in there. Get me that stolen base guy immediately because I'm out here drafting. People are saying that stolen bases are up, and they are, but I'm still finding myself, you know, finding my
Searching for them. Yeah.
getting my Maikel Garcia and convincing myself to be happy with it, right? So, yeah, if I can get a guy doing 265, which is what I hope Matt Maikel gets to, I'm very happy with that.
Okay. So to wrap this conversation on Emmanuel Tejada, go get him. Him and Adams, guys, you can probably get right now for the conversation you and I just had for less than their actual value. And we're not even talking about what they could be. Tejada, more or less, being 19 and an A ball, we would put him in the same classification as a name like Matt Shaw and Caleb Durbin for, having that steal potential. And, with Tejada more or less being probably a utility guy. But that feeds right into the next player. And that's why I asked you, would you rather have the 265, 10 and 30 or the 265, 25 and 5? Because next player on our list, numbers, well, actually, he's going to be 2 down. So completely backtrack. Number 5 is a little less exciting. We'll jump on him, though. Number 5, scout the stat line, third base prospect of 2024 is Nacho Alvarez. Nacho Alvarez going to be with the Atlanta Braves. I'm actually going to let you talk about him because I don't have his peak projection at the moment pulled up. I got too excited about Cam Smith. So, Atlanta Braves, what are your thoughts on Nacho Alvarez, Doc?
Way to completely sewer me, brother.
I
Because
know.
I don't have the peak projections pulled up. That was your job, so I don't have that in front of me. We'll let you bring that up. He's still just 21 years old. I'm not really in on him, but we'll see if his speed can play. He's going to have to be that guy. I know there's some people out there who are saying, they're still believers. And frankly, if you ever believed in him, you should still. It's like he's only 21. I just remember looking at his profile and wondering how much of this is really for real. I mean, the stolen bases seem like they are genuine, they are legit, but 10 home runs maxing out here. I mean, is this a Durbin-esque profile? Is it not? I mean, so when he came up though, he struck out 10 times and didn't walk at all. So hey, if that happens to Durbin, I will have so much crow to eat. I will be puking for all the crow that I ate. So hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm gonna go ahead and look at Nacho's. Usually when Matt does the peak projections, that's when I pull up and I scroll around on Fangraphs.
All right,
So I
pass
got
it
his.
back to me.
No, I'm back. He's got beautiful contact skills, beautiful zone contact skills. Not quite as good as Durbin, but very, very, very good. So I guess you know what? Backtrack it. I said I'm not really in on him, especially at second base. The way that second base is like the depth there is not good for fantasy perspective. So I'm
Are they?
backtracking
Is he
here.
playing more? Is he playing more at second base, or is he playing more at third?
That's a great question. It says here his fielding last year was it was actually a lot of shortstop, majority shortstop. So that's a different conversation, right? He's actually not. We are on third base peak projections
Yeah,
today, so I don't know if I really.
he's
He
he's
played.
widely considered a third base prospect, but he's not gonna play third base because Riley's on a
He did.
long-term deal.
Yeah, he did have more slight. I'm just reading so many things wrong here. So total for the year, he did 70 games at shortstop. Total for the year. Yeah, baseball reference, get it together. They're messing this one up. But yeah, third base looks like 33 reps, 33 games
Any
started.
second base play?
Barely.
Okay.
So
I
like
mean, I
yeah,
think at the major league level,
the
second.
major league level, all he played was second base. So
Yeah,
what I don't
but
know what
Albies was hurt, and like Albies is also on a lot.
uh,
I mean, it's
hey,
hard to tell.
yeah, maybe I don't know. People kind of consider it like if you can play shortstop, you're easily playing second. But if you want to cut the kid some slack, we're learning on the fly here, folks. If you didn't notice, and I'm thinking on the fly here. I think maybe him having to basically learn a brand new position in the major leagues,
Hmm.
that's not going to help your ability to focus on
Yeah.
it. So I don't think this guy went. I actually can't. I'm like after his like bad debut, I'm actually higher on Nacho Alvarez after just kind of perusing his profile here. Very interesting. Got a lot of discipline, making great contact, making a lot of contact. The quality probably not too high, but yeah, if he can pull a few out, get up to 10. You got to steal those bases though for us. You got to steal those bases. He seems pretty efficient. Doesn't really get caught stealing, so yeah, I think we're seeing post-hype prospect status here. Good job, model. Everyone's counting him out, including me, to start this conversation. I think I'm looking for value on Nacho Alvarez if I see him. Maybe get a throw in for a deal, see what happens.
I think Nacho, because I was right on par with what you were saying, when you introed Alvarez. I think he's more utility because of team context.
Mm-hmm.
Shortstop is really the best avenue to playing time for Nacho. You have Orlando Arcia, who has been usable for the Braves, but as we just talked, Austin Riley and Ozzie Albies, barring a trade, aren't going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that leave for Alvarez? Potentially the middle, the infield utility guy, which is still a good piece when you talk about the stolen bases. Like he's a guy I would absolutely love to have on my bench in a 30-man, right? If we could have him as our bench guy when we need to make a fill, awesome. Same context as we talked about with Durbin, and you highlighted that. But the EVs scare me a lot. AAA, his average EV was 86.3 with a max of 106. Majors bumped his max up almost 3 miles per hour, which is good, almost 110. Average at 83.8. But I think you brought up a great point. He only had 20 batted balls at that rate. That's a bad sample size. Also, learning a position is good. I'm not drafting Alvarez where he's been taken. Ross took him in one of our 30 mans because Ross is a big supporter. And, I'm going to let guys that have more faith in him take him because I don't know where he plays. Whereas some of these other guys, I see more opportunity with playing time because they don't play for a juggernaut like the Braves.
Yeah, I see that, and I think it's important to remember when we're talking about utility. It's again utility versus super utility. Um, yeah, you get a guy like we're gonna. How many times will we say the name Durbin today? I can't tell you, folks. It's gonna be a high number, but it's like Durbin. They are playing him everywhere, and he's on a team that plays people everywhere and loves these kind of guys. Whereas you're looking with the Brewers, and you look at the Braves. It's like, okay, these guys are going to be trying to go win a World Series probably, and
Yes.
have
Same
these
with same
guys.
with the Orioles, right? Same
Yeah,
problem.
and there's just guys who are not going to be swapping in and out. So it's you have to take these when you're looking at a utility-ish profile. That's what you have to consider.
All right, moving on. Now on to the player that I teased. Number 6, scout the stat line, third baseman 2024 is Cam Smith, now of the Houston Astros. Peak projection has Smith at a 121.2 WRC plus, a 265 batting average, on base percentage at 333, slug at 478, 26 home runs, 7 stolen bases, 8% walk, 22% strikeout. Doc, Cam Smith now in Houston is a big up arrow for me. What are your thoughts on Smith?
I mean, Baseball Reference has been dropping the ball the last few days or last like couple of weeks actually. Like I've been looking at rookie status, they're not updating it. They have Cam Smith still with the Cubs. I don't know what's going on. I know he's not with the Cubs, but it's interesting. It's like you think about it, it's probably the best landing spot for him just to yank home runs down that pole there into those little what do they call it the something
Crawford
box
boxes.
Crawford boxes. Yeah, and he just lit the world on fire. 6 home runs at A in 15 games. I think that's a little bit of a mirage.
Yeah.
I don't think he's got that kind of power, but he's got enough juice. He's got more than Alex Bregman probably, and Bregman turned that into some fun power there. Now we're hearing rumors of Bregman maybe coming back to Houston, which would how is that even possible? Is Paredes like gonna become like just like this bench bat?
The plan right now, if it happens, is Altuve goes to left,
Uh-huh.
Paredes slides back over to second, which he had played some time with Tampa and Detroit, and then Bregman obviously takes third base.
And Cam Smith rots.
I mean, yeah, you have a 3-year deal with Christian Walker at first. Bregman presumably maybe it's a Bellinger deal where it's like a 3-year deal and he's got opt-outs, but probably doesn't opt out. Yeah, Cam Smith then becomes a trade piece, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I guess it's interesting. What if they did this like to get leverage on Bregman? Like that's such a powerful thing to do. If that was the intention, I mean, with how long Bregman's been out there, I can't imagine this is how he thought this would go. So it's interesting his whole free agency. Looking at at the contact skills he displayed, even up to Double A, 76% contact at Double A is great. It doesn't matter if he seemed to do it essentially across all levels here. A 21-year-old, he seemed extremely polished. So this is not like a kid who's going to need a ton of time in the minors before he comes up. So I'm wondering where he played around in college here. Yeah, just third base it seems. Like I said, played some games in the outfield. Maybe they find a spot out there for him. I'm not familiar with their roster. Let's see, Astros roster resource. This is it, folks. You get nothing but the most prep on this show. It's kind of fun though,
I
right?
could see him. I could see him in an outfield position, but
Mhm.
probably preferred left field. But then if you have Altuve in left, like you can't play Altuve in right because
Get
he's getting
Chaz
older.
McCormick out of here. There you
Oh
go.
gosh, I know.
But they have Taylor Trammell
It's a
penciled in at
bad,
left.
bad outfield. It's a very bad outfield.
So there you go, right? And Jake Myers, like whatever in center field. So is Alvarez never playing the outfield anymore, or what's going on with that?
So because they may sign Bregman, there is talks that Alvarez would go back to the outfield as well.
Mhm.
It's a lot of moving pieces. All
Okay.
right. I don't think they
So
expected, I know they didn't expect Bregman to be here. You don't sign Christian Walker, trade for Cam Smith and Isaac Paredes. If there's anyone in the room that says Bregman may be back, like this doesn't happen.
we'll see. So yeah, we'll see what happens here. There's a lot of moving pieces. If Cam Smith becomes like a permanent outfielder, that probably docks his value some. But I mean, still talking about fantasy purposes. I mean, that the it's such a weird team because everyone here is old. So if Cam Smith comes up as an outfielder this year, I mean that's good because they'll still probably have like a 2 to 3 year window. This team, they're back open. The window's back open with bringing Bregman back and bringing Walker in. They're extending themselves, so he'd be part of a probably pretty powerful lineup. So even if he went to an outfielder position, but certainly it's like a very roller coaster ride here. It's like he went from the hottest post draft prospect, probably, maybe other than Nick Kurtz, just launching bombs nonstop, goes to the perfect park, and then immediately just gets crushed by all these roster moves potentially. So we'll have to see what happens here. I don't think they brought him in for nothing. They're not going to let him rot in the minors if he's ripping the minors up. And I think you see Cam Smith this year in the major league. So he didn't have much time to pop on our model, but the fact that
Yeah.
he did so in such a short period of time tells you something.
Well, and Houston's a team, if Bregman does resign and maybe Smith isn't suited for the outfield, that we've seen they trade their top prospects if they're in it to win it, right? I mean, we saw the Kikuchi
Mm-hmm.
deal last year. They traded a number of players, Loperfido, Bloom, like they are willing to move on from guys. So I think underlying, you look at the K percentage, pretty solid. At A ball in 15 games, 21.1 was his highest rate. Double A, only 5 games, but 15%. High A, like again, small sample size, 12 games, 15.8. Those are good numbers. We need to see what he looks like at Double A over the course of at least half a season. Like, let's check in with him in June. But then, the biggest knock on Smith was he had a little bit less development at Florida State than some of the other collegiate bats. And on top of that, he had a problem with his ground ball rate. Just again, in that small sample size that we talked about making his debut, his ground ball rate is already dropping. So we talk about 50% at high A in those 12 games, dropped it down to 43.8 at double A. And I want to see him lean into pull side power a little bit more if he stays in Houston. Last year, over the course of all of his levels, he had a 31.9% pull, a 34% center shot, and a 34% opposite field. He's almost equal across the board. Like, that's a good spray chart.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about those Crawford boxes, I want to see more of a 36, 37% pull. If I can get that to 40, we could be talking about real big time power numbers in Houston, kind of that Paredes approach, which is why they
Mm-hmm.
traded for him. But yeah, Cam Smith, number 6, I think that's a solid landing spot with the model. Number 7, you're going to have to help me with the pronunciation on this. This is going to be Arizona Diamondbacks, Demetrio Cristianos. Plays all over the diamond. We missed him on second base. So again, he plays more second, plays more short, but I wanted to get him into our conversations in this position lineup, and I chose third base. His overall peak numbers are very good on top of what he did last year. Major league level, he had a 341 batting average across the minors in complex and A ball, 7 home runs, 30 stolen bases, great walk to strikeout, 13% walk, 16% strikeout, on base percentage of 429, and he hit 341. So he jumped off the page last year for production numbers. His peak projections is 273 batting average, 339 on base percentage, a 423 slug, 15 home runs, 19 stolen bases, really nice walk to K at 8% walk, 19% strikeout, and a WRC plus of 111.1. Doc, I'm not as in on Cristianos. I know he's definitely been a riser this past year. He was aggressively taken in both of our 30 mans. Are you buying what he's done so far?
I mean, he's kind of forcing us to at least think about it, right? So he's now 20, but he did this in his age 20 season. He's 6 foot tall, 180, and that's where is he? He's from Arizona. He's now look at me looking like a bad guy. He's kind of sounded like he's from Dominican or something like that. But that's interesting. I was gonna say usually these guys have bad measurements, like 5'7", 140. You have no idea how big they are. So he probably really is that big. From Nogales, Arizona. I'm going to go ahead and guess some Mexican background there. He's got unbelievable contact numbers, 83%, which is pretty cool. So he's got that frame that's projectable still. I mean, 180 at 6 foot. Doesn't have to really get too much bigger though, and he's stealing 30 bases, only getting caught 3 times. 7 home runs is maybe there's more to come, and yeah, he seems to have a great approach. And I haven't really been targeting him because I think people out there like him more than I do.
Same.
Like going 116. He went in our weird FYPD in the salary cap league. He went 16th overall in this year's FYPD, folks. So just before guys like Theo Gillen or Franklin Arias or Ryan Sloan or Rayner or a lot of players. So he was Caminiti, a lot of players. So he was extremely highly valued. If you're playing with sharks like we do, you're gonna have to go out and pay for him, because he's getting trendy real quick. I think you're gonna see his name pop up more, and of course the model's catching this. I want to see how many games he's playing. Yeah, so most of his games are at second base. So again, with the way that second base is looking these days, I think you should probably be taking Demetrio. Such a tricky name. What is this? Demetrio Crisantes. There you go.
That's a
Take
way
him
better
more.
pronunciation. Thank you.
Yeah, take him more seriously.
Yeah, I mean, his underlying numbers are great. At A ball, 83% contact rate. His swing percentage was at 42.7. So, not showing too much aggression there. His swinging strike rate was only at a 7.3. Like, we're talking about very, very good discipline and eye at the plate. And I think that's going to provide him a lot of value as he gets older and starts to fill into that body. We could see those power numbers start to go up at 15.7% strikeout rate over the course of 2024. That's a fantastic level with the numbers I just talked about. So if power goes up and K rate only marginally goes up, we could be talking about a really, really strong prospect this season. But again, they are catching on. Like, they do like him quite a bit. We talked about pull percentage with Cam Smith. We're seeing a pretty strong pull percentage here from Demetrio at 40% at A ball overall in the course of the season, 43.8%. I think that'll play pretty well in Arizona, bigger ballpark, but definitely think he has value. And that's why I put him on the third base list today, because this is a guy that will more or less be on the infield. It's just kind of, where does that playing time allow in Arizona? All right, moving on. We are on to yet another Milwaukee Brewer. There were 3 of them on the Scout the Stat Line top 10 list this year. So coming in at number 8, Eric Batanti, Scout the Stat Line 8th third baseman for 2024. Batanti, a prep bat taken by the Brewers in 2023. Overall batting average for peak projection is 244, on base percentage of 332, slug at 466, 28 home runs projected, 10 stolen bases, 11% walk rate, 28% strikeout rate. Doc, I love Batanti, but you go ahead and start this off.
Me go ahead, my brother in Christ. We have to talk about what Matt did. When did you take him? So we did a
56 overall.
I said, so listen, this folks. I bring Matt Morris, my co-host, my humble co-host, into the glorious world of CBS mock drafting. Scott White says, "Only send me your best men," and I said, "All right, this guy's okay. He's not my best, but he's okay." And then he said, "All right, well, that's all. We actually need a guy, so we'll take your okay." And then I said, "Okay." And then we brought Matt Morris in there, and Matt Morris proceeds to go Matt Shaw 3rd overall, and then Eric Batanti 56 overall. Scott messaged me after, said, "If you ever try any crap like that again,
I'm unfollowing you and blocking you.
it's over."
I'll start.
Dude, Scott White will not. He does not follow me. He just DM'd me the other day, like asking if my wife was still, how the baby was going. I'm like, bro, follow me. You're clearly my friend. Anyway, so I'm just gonna tell him to do it one of these days. All right. So, but point is, Eric Batanti, you are high on him. I want
Very
you
high.
to start off.
Very high. Yeah, it's organizationally and it's organizational biased, but if there's an organization that I think a player taken from the prep ranks that has contract contact concerns with prodigious power can be swayed in the right direction of a plus major leaguer, I think it's being drafted to Milwaukee's organization. Now, we've had our concerns with Wilkin and his numbers. Like, I would have said the same thing about Wilkin. You know, we've talked about him at length, but Tonti this season is going to be his age 19th year. Like, he's 19 years old. So he has the ability to project and grow. Let's just say 3 seasons, 19, 20, 21, you know, maybe making the major leagues at 21 or 22. That's 3 full seasons of development within Milwaukee's organization. The power is definitely there, one of the best power grades in the minor leagues. He has shown the ability to hit for average at complex at 320. He didn't have a great A-ball experience in 28 games. He hit 221, did have 8 home runs. On base percentage also struggled a little bit at 318. But I'm in for the age. I looked at Batanti, and if you put him in this past draft class where his age to level would have fallen still on kind of the moderate side. I mean, we had a first rounder in this past class prep bat that's already 20. Batanti would have been a guy that I think is probably taken in the first round. I think you're talking about a guy that's arguably taken in the top 15 FYPD picks, if not fringe, maybe top 13. And that's a player that I'm willing to take a risk on, especially as we get to, let's say, the 50th pick of any prospect draft. When he was taken by Milwaukee, his comp was Chris Bryant. I don't think that's a fair comp. I think what they were trying to articulate was more or less that he did have that real big raw power. We need to see Batanti hit 250 at the major league level. That's kind of the number that I want to project because I absolutely think Batanti is a 40 home run major leaguer if the bat can play.
And that's why I had you go first. You have some thoughts on Batanti. Yeah, he's got, Fangraphs has him at current 55 raw power with a ceiling of 70 raw power. So they're saying he hasn't even fully. What does that even mean? Because I know game power, I can see what that means. Like, okay, he's got a ceiling of 55 game power. It's only showing 25. But isn't like your raw power just immutable? Like, is that just what you have in you? Or are they saying he could put more
Yeah,
muscle on? I guess they're saying he could put more muscle on.
I've always found it odd to compare the two because you would just think that like when you're projecting power, it would just be power. But I think what they're really doing now is looking at batting practice compared to game power. I think that's where
No,
the
I
difference
no,
is.
I know what that. I know raw power versus game power. I'm saying they have game power 25 actual versus 55. He could get to that in the game.
The metrics that Fangraphs gives us are fantastic, but as far as grades, I completely agree. I'll make a list and we'll publish it, you know, as we get closer to the season. I feel pretty strongly that Eric Batanti's in my top 5 for minor league power.
Interesting. So they're actually giving a compliment here. The raw power, they're saying, well, what I'm trying to get to here is I'm saying it says his raw power is currently 55 and he could get to 70 raw power. That's a pretty good compliment. I'm guessing they mean he could put on more muscle because, like, well, that's what I'm trying to say here is how do you get to more raw power? Raw power typically means what's in you to begin with. So that's kind of a weird measurement for me. But that must be what they mean. His contact skills suck, as you said. So like below 70, not great. But yeah, he's young enough, and I think certainly the definition of high risk, high reward, right?
Yeah, I mean, high risk, high reward, good organization. That's why I have so much confidence. Is I do genuinely believe that the Brewers have done a great job developing these guys. And if there's someone that's going to take a Batanti style profile, I would rather it be Milwaukee than teams that don't have the same bat speed training, that don't have the same, you know, labs that they're bringing these guys into. Like Milwaukee has done a really good job. Now, Batanti could get to double A in a couple of years here and hit 220 with an on base percentage of 390. And we're talking about a guy that I look like a fool for taking 56 overall and Scott White and Chris
With an
Towers. Not
OBP
Scott.
of with an OBP of 390.
No, 290.
Okay, maybe I
It-
heard
because
wrong.
because then he's unusable, right? I mean,
Yeah,
if you can't
yeah.
hit over 220 at double A and your strikeout rate is at 30 and like that is the reality for a lot of these guys. And some of, you know, the White Sox have that tall young kid similar profile. I don't trust the White Sox to develop Eric Batanti like I trust the Brewers. So if I'm going to be
Mhm.
torn between the two, both have prodigious power. I'm gonna more or less lean Milwaukee.
Yeah.
All right, we are on to the final two. Next up on our list is going to be number 9, scout the stat line third baseman of 2024, Sal Stewart. Peak projections coming in at 114.7 WRC plus, a 260 batting average, on base percentage of 349, slug at 423, home runs 17, stolen bases 10, a walk percentage of 11, K percentage of 18. Doc, we have a super sleeper. What do you think?
Yeah, I've liked him for a while. It seems like he must be old now. He's 21. He just turned 21 and been hanging out at high A too long. Please promote him. We need. I think we're on the verge of seeing Sal Stewart. Excuse me. There's a freakish way that we could see him at the end of next season if enough injuries happen. But I'd say more if a strong season happens at Double A, probably gets moved up to Triple A, and then maybe coming out of spring training next year, he can work for battle for a spot on the major league roster. He's got like weird power, right? Like not a lot of it, but it's not nothing either. We're not sure. He's kind of 6'1", 215. He's this chunky Italian dude. He's the most Italian guy in the world. Whenever I see Sal Stewart's face and his name,
Very
it's
Italian.
fun. Old Sal, like he could easily be. And I think Ohio does, like Cincinnati has a Cincinnati chili with like noodles. Maybe there's some Italian there. I don't know. I'm just like, I know I know Cincinnati chili. You ever had Cincinnati chili?
No, but the Midwest has a chain that I remember in Milwaukee that
Skyline,
is that what it is?
that's one of them. Skyline
Yeah,
chili.
and it's odd because like it's a very Midwest thing. Like if you think about, I guess maybe East Coast too, but you wouldn't find a chili chain on the West Coast anywhere. I could be
Mm-hmm.
wrong, but maybe there's some endorsement opportunity for Sal.
Bro. So what did I just say? I said I'm gonna tell Scott to follow me back, and so he said he had made a joke on my email. He said I should hire you as my draft coordinator because I'm bringing all these guys in. I said my agent says you can start by following me back on X. See, at CBS Scott White followed you back. Now I have to watch what I say. No, he's a cool guy. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Scott White and Caleb Durbin today. Ironically, he's the only other guy who's got Durbin in his top 100. But Sal Stewart, people are kind of sleeping on him. He was a first round pick, and dude, this is going to be the most annoying thing for you to chop up for X. You're going to chop up the Sal Stewart clip now with all this banter we're doing, or maybe just let it all hang.
We're gonna let it hang and we're gonna tag
Okay.
Scott White.
Okay,
Love Scott.
perfect. Yeah, so yeah, man, he's a great asset for the industry. Here's the interesting thing about contact versus average. Is I frankly you can eyeball it, and I still like to. If I see a guy doing 300, I know he's got good contact numbers. Versus Nolan Gorman doing 200, I know he doesn't. So Stewart though, this is kind of intriguing. Like just when a guy like Stewart feels like he's almost stagnating at high A, you see 2023 2 home runs. And it was 29 games, but 291 batting average, 397 OBP. Then 2024, you see 8 home runs in 80 games. Also, stop getting hurt. That would be great. And then 279 batting average and 391 OBP. So like the average goes down a little bit, right? And you're like, okay, well, that would be a good time to dig into the underlying numbers. And you see he actually went up from a 78% contact rate to 83. It's really good. So he's making strides. He's improving. It seems like he's probably going to be kind of a boring asset. I'm trying to think of who he could be. Where he's not going to run. He's going to take a walk. We might be looking though at like 50. Like it's probably like a 18 to 20 home run guy. Maybe he's Ryan Mountcastle, but takes walks with like 10% less power.
I mean,
that seems like I'm stretching. I'm stretching Ryan Mountcastle there, but Ryan Mountcastle is kind of a boring guy, so I think it's something like that.
it's interesting because the profile that got me so excited post 2023 was the 16% walk rate to the 15% K rate. He had walked more than he struck out, and that was incredible for, I think, at the time, a 19-year-old. This season, a little bit changed, as you mentioned, right? 17% K rate to a 15% walk rate. Like, oh, how egregious. I've always, I guess I've said now for a year, if he can just develop that power that you talked about, if this can be a 20 home run profile player with that discipline and that eye, We're talking about a very, very, very elite level categories player outside of the big boys because he's going to protect your ratios across the board on a regular basis. I would say probably career upside, maybe touches top 10 at third base, maybe even a little bit better. But I think we have a very solid floor, probably a top 15 third baseman for 4 or 5 years once he makes the major leagues. But the power has to develop, right? 2023, we saw 12 home runs across 117 games. In 24, we saw 8 in 80. So this season is a really important year. I think projectably, what do you think? Starts at double A probably in 2025? I think that's fair, right?
Yeah, he said after unmuting himself. Um, that's so cool. I was trying to cut you off, and usually I'm successful with that. And then I felt bad because you actually I realized so I tried to cut you off, and then I went and I stopped because you were on a really good run, and I felt awful. But then I seen here that I was actually muted, so it all worked out. And
This
now
is
we
gonna be
can
our best clip on X. Everyone's just gonna be watching this like these two are complete idiots.
Well, dude, yeah, it's funny because I think sometimes I start thinking, "Oh, we're late in the podcast. Okay, well, if anyone's still listening, they want to hear some banter, anyways. Keep them into it." But then I forget. Oh yeah, this one gets chopped up and
Listen,
put
if
everywhere.
anything, we're entertaining. That's the goal, right?
Exactly. We're unique, folks. So, what I was going to say actually is correct. The power is everything here in terms of this guy who's not running, kind of boring profile. It's a ratio machine. Well, what better place to play than the Cincinnati Great American Ballpark Bandbox? So, he could go like if you had him in like Seattle, dude, this could be like a 10 to 15 home run profile. It's
Yep.
not good. This he could actually get he could yank 25
Yeah.
just from being in Cincinnati. And I don't think he's like actually a 25 home run power guy as of right now, but he's still young. And when you just have that great contact ability, that big kind of chunky frame, when you're eating that, chicken parmigiana, and when you're eating that pasta every day, every night before a big game, the way that I don't know enough about Italians to keep going with stereotypes, but what would they call their grandma? Their nonna, the nonna, right? Like
You know them better
nonna
than I
used
do.
to
I have no idea.
like yeah. I actually had a lot of Italian friends growing up, so it's coming back to me. The nonna, they had their nonna make some chicken parmesan, and then he
I
goes out and
actually had
mashes
chicken
25.
parmesan last night. It was delicious.
Yeah, so chicken parm. That was the whole thing with Anthony Volpe. Did you ever hear about that?
No.
So Volpe was not doing well, and then last year, remember when he became really good? So it leaked out in the New York media that Austin Wells like had something about Austin Wells
Cooking chicken parmesan
made
for him.
parmesan or tell like somehow like got Volpe eating chicken parm, and then like the whole fan base ran with it and like, oh dude, get back to that chicken parm. So it's just the most ridiculous thing in the whole world. Again, folks, Sal Stewart, the Godfather, dude. If he becomes good, he's the Godfather. That'd be a great nickname.
That'd be a great nickname. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we were talking about what to nickname Sal Stewart. Yeah, the Godfather. We're rolling with that. All right, folks, this is the greatest clip of all time.
Yeah, I mean, at least we have a nickname for him. We can. I don't know that we'll be allowed to trademark that. The actual movie franchise slash book may have an issue with it, but I love Sal. Right? I think what you said was perfect, and we'll move on after that. But again, we've talked about a number of these guys today that are young. Luke Adams, 20, Emmanuel Tejada, 19, even Nacho at 21. Um, Batanti under 20, Sal Stewart. Like we have a good group, even though it's a really, really shallow third base prospect rankings where I think we could see some of these guys, if they take a step forward, really start to refill that group. And the price point on a lot of them is not where I think it will be in a year's time from now. So Sal's, in my opinion, out of all the younger guys, he's the safest. Would you agree with that?
Repeat it again. Repeat that premise again.
If we put Sal Stewart, Batanti, Tejada, and Adams, all guys either 20 or younger in like the same group, I think Stewart is probably the safest to be a major league player in general, but also starter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not familiar with his defense, so that'll be interesting.
Yes.
But I'm seeing his fielding logs here. Interestingly enough, are you aware that he plays a lot of second base?
I am, and I put him on third because when you look at the organization, they have like
Hmm.
15 second basemen.
Yeah. Either way, I mean, dude, he becomes more valuable at second base.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is what
Because
it is.
because with projectable power, when we look at second baseman, I think we could say, he hopefully has more projectable power some of the guys we talked about in the second base breakdown.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on from the 25-minute Sal Stewart clip. X, we love you guys. Number 10, scout the stat line, third baseman of 2024 is yet again another Milwaukee Brewer, Mike Bovey, age 22. Peak projection has him at a WRC plus of 117.4, a BA at 277, on base percentage at 350, a slug of 433, 17 home runs, 4 stolen bases, walk percentage at 9%, K percentage at 20%. Bovey in 2024 for Milwaukee split between two levels. Started the year off at high A, 13 games, batted just an average 553 on base percentage and 642. He was okay. No home runs, 1 stolen base. He then got the bump to double A, rightfully so. 66 games at double A, batted 306 with a 374 on base percentage, a 447 slug, 6 home runs, 1 more stolen base. So speed is not in his profile either. 9% walk rate to a 17% strikeout rate. Doc, we have a hitter with no power, it seems like here.
Yeah, dude. And I see these from Hastings, Nebraska.
Yep.
And it's like exactly where you would think that Mike Bovey would be from. And the absolute, it's not near Lincoln, it's not near Omaha. It's the other part where nobody's from except for Mike Bovey and just like a whole and like Nebraska's an underrated state. I'll tell you what, man. It's got like red rocks out west. It's actually got like it's got Everglades in the northeast, and I'm serious, like a swamp. It's weird,
Are
but
you okay? So are you familiar with when Bovey was drafted in 2023 in the second round by
mhm,
Milwaukee? He was taken out of Nebraska Omaha. I
mhm.
just assumed Nebraska Omaha was Nebraska, but it is not Nebraska. It's not the State College Nebraska. It is a secondary school. Are you familiar with both schools?
I don't know what you're talking. No, I don't know anything about Omaha. And
Okay.
I've just driven through Nebraska, and I think it's an interesting state. I saw he's from there, which is random. There's not a lot of people from out there in the middle of Nebraska who come through and get to be on the Dynasty Dingers podcast, like Mike Bovey. Is that
What
how
an
you say
honor.
his name?
Bovey.
Burv
That's how I
Bovey.
say it. And
Oh,
that's how I've heard it said,
that's how you
through
say it. Then it's definitely not right. Yeah. So he's this guy again. I want to guess his contact rate. Eight, like what? So he had a 306 at batting average at double A, 550. I bet you at that's such a crazy number, man.
crazy.
At high A, 553 batting average, 642 OBP. Unfortunately for fantasy, like this ain't playing, man. Like he's got no power. He's not running at all. If he plays great defense, like this could be a really useful utility guy that's not going to. He's going to help your race. He's going to get on base. He's going to be a real life guy. Maybe like how crazy is this to say? Boring Stephen Kwan, like I guess,
Yeah.
right? Like, so I'm gonna without looking at his contact, I'm gonna guess in high A he might have had like a 95 zone, like 90. It doesn't say zone, so 95. No, that's too crazy. But like 92, 95. I'll say 95 contact rate at high A. I'll guess, and then at double A maybe he had like a 90. Let's take a look here.
You were
Um,
close-ish. He's in elite contact
oh,
numbers.
but these are
Um,
not as crazy as I would have thought they would be.
no, they're not.
That's crazy. So it's interesting. I don't know. We'll have to
His
see how he
swinging
does.
strike percentage at high A in those 12 games was a 3.8. And then at double A, it was a 6.8.
Yeah,
So
that's too nerdy for me. Listen. I just learned about contact rates, guys. You can't just be coming at me with more stats.
it's hard because you talked about Quan. I think a better comparison is probably a Luis Arias with a little bit less hit and marginally more power.
Like maybe
And
less power.
yeah, I mean,
It's
he's
not
a
like it's a weird profile.
It is a very weird profile, but he's still young. He's still under 23. So, like, and he plays in Milwaukee. You talked about Great American Ballpark. You know, the Reds are in the same division. Like, I could see him maybe getting to 15 home runs in a prime season. I'm not saying that's going to be a consistent, but like, I could see him finding a way. He pulls the ball pretty well. Um, is at a 38.6% pull rate at double A. So I don't know. I don't. The problem is, does Milwaukee start him at third base over Luke Adams and Eric Batanti? Maybe for a year, right? Because we know Milwaukee's had a third base wasteland for a while now. But like, what if Brock Wilken has a great start to the season? There's a lot of competition for Bovee.
Yeah, man, it's like I wish the best for the guy. He's the pride and joy of Hastings, Nebraska. I keep saying it. No, and so this is like I just don't know what to make of him. He's certainly, he's in the right organization full of boring guys. We'll see what happens. He. I can't quite recommend going out to get him. He would not be my guy, but if he was available in round 56 of our startup 30,
Should we look right now? This might
I
as well be a.
guarantee I
He's
guarantee
got to be
you.
gone. There's no
No,
way
of
he's
course he's
still on the
gone.
board.
No, if he's no, I know. I remember seeing him go. He went. This is exactly what I'm talking about. He went round 34, probably because of Scout the Stat Line. Sorry,
That's
guys.
crazy.
Should have waited for the podcast. That would be yeah. So, because I could see him like being high up there, and yeah, I don't know. You got. Although I will say, folks. So round 34. When we say that, just to be clear, our rookie round started in round
27.
27. So
Yeah.
that is like your seventh round. And so with 30 teams, it's not like super high, but out of 30 rounds, it's pretty high. So yeah, exactly. Where he's going, where frankly, probably guys like us, like Scout the Stat Line, our model, where we've gotten him, he's priced too high. So it's gonna have to come way down for me to be interested.
I mean, let's try to extrapolate this real quick just so that we can kind of put some context to it. Let's say Bovee played the entire season at Double A. He only played 66 games there. So let's double it. 132 games, 12 home runs. Like there's 10 home run per season upside here. So that is better than Arias. I mean, the projection is usable for fantasy. I just fear that he's more of a real life asset than he is a fantasy
Mm-hmm.
asset. If we're getting 17 home runs with a 277 average and a 350 on base percentage, like in a deep league, maybe you have a middle infielder, maybe you have a corner and a utility, maybe you have two utilities. I think he plays in fantasy in that league, say it's 16 to 20 team format. But you got to hit this projection. The 17 home runs are so key here because I do think 277 batting average is perfect online. Like everything we're seeing at the minor league with his hit tool seems like that's absolutely obtainable. The 17 at the major league level when he's not even pushing 12, that's hard to believe.
Yeah, not quite getting there. I mean, he had in this last year, he only had 6 home runs
Yeah.
in 79 games, but not for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps us. We have finished third base. The clips are going to be fantastic. So great job, both of us. Anything we want to, chat about, maybe the leagues that we started up or anything before we go today, Doc?
Yeah, so thanks for putting up with our nonsense with Ross. I heard some good things for people who are in the league, at least. They said it was fun having Ross and B Shanks on here, the long podcast. That was kind of some lip service for the fans, the real fans who've been here the whole time. Next, we're probably going to bring Owen Hurd on. We'll talk about scheduling for that, but Owen Hurd on to talk about our points league. And again, I want us to try to apply that. We're not going to bring anyone more than Owen on just because me and Owen will end up just taking 2 hours arguing with just with us alone. Never mind Matt dropping in there, and so I think 4 people wouldn't work. But yeah, we'll have Owen on to talk about this points league, and we'll try to apply it to like, hey, yeah, how are dynasty values shifting? Frankly, with the category focused podcast, we hadn't even got into the prospects portion of it. So Maybe we could go a little bit more prospect centric here too. Next time, I should probably put a little poll out on X to see what y'all like. I know personally, me, when I see great podcasts I like, and they talk about MLB players and they talk about prospects, at least in the off season, I'm going straight for the prospect podcast every time. I'm seeing Matt nod there. So we'll see if our fans agree or our watchers. Maybe you're not fans. Maybe you like hate watch us and listen to us. So
Critique everything we talk about,
I
especially the chicken parmesan.
chicken parmesan, bro. This was a weird episode. We had technical issues like the beginning of it, before it started, in the middle of it. I gotta pee now.
This is what we
You
get
know.
for taking like 2 weeks off from the positions, though. We were
Mm-hmm.
nailing them, right? We had catcher,
Mm-hmm.
first base, second base done. We got the clips out, and then we looked at it and it was like, this is daunting. We have shortstop, third base, outfield, and do we do pitching? Question mark. So at least we got third done. It also wasn't a sexy group. I talked about how
I
some of
think
the
it
names were.
was. It got
Yeah,
sexier as we went on.
yeah. I mean, I agree with you.
Sal
I
Stewart
would
as
agree.
number 9.
Yeah, I agree with you. I
I
mean,
first
heck,
saw it.
that Mike Bovee guy, I mean, what a
Mm.
steal.
Well, when we first looked at it, I first sent me. I feel like this often happens. You send me over the list, and I'm like, this is terrible." And then I get it, and then I get into it, and I'm like, no, these are gems here, man. So
Well, and
yeah,
this is something we kind of talked about, but let me just pull it up for reference. I had mentioned that Kobe Mayo is, um, technically speaking, a right fielder on Scout the Stat Line, which we'll have to talk to Ross about just to give it more of a like proper context there. But the actual list itself for just third baseman was a really interesting list as I continue to stall as I pull it up because we had guys that would have made this list far less, I think, enjoyable to actually go
hmm.
through. I can't seem to get this toggle to work. There we go. All right. Bear with me, people. If you're here still, it would have been Matt Shaw 1, Nacho 2, Cam Smith 3, Chase Meadroff 4, Sal Stewart 5, Bovey 6, um, Johnny Severino for the Pirates, formerly of the Brewers, 7, Ricardo Cabrera for Cincinnati 8, Orlevis Martinez. That's a good one to have after the steroid suspension 9, and then Arjun Namala 10. Like that's just it wasn't the list. So we were able to put 10 together that we felt were at least fair of potential third base or needed to be placed somewhere because they're infielders that deserve to be ranked this year.
Yeah, it's a position you're gonna have to prioritize. I think with third base, it's gone through its ebbs and flows, and now it's kind of like ebbing again right now. Especially once we lose Mark Vientos, if that happens the way it
Yep.
looks like it might, it's like doesn't help. It looks like you were the chosen one. He was going to be one of these top.
They've re-engaged with Pete Alonso as of yesterday. The Mets have. It's like the same thing with Bregman, where because they had kicked this past weekend the tires on Spencer Torkelson, and I was really excited about that. And it seemed as like that kicking of the tires and that leak was kind of what you were referring to with Cam Smith and potentially like, was that just leverage? I don't think in Houston it was necessarily, right? It may have been. I think the Torkelson kicking of the tire was completely like, hey, if you don't want to take the deal that we have on the table, we will find somebody else. And here, lo and behold, Scott Boras has come back to the table. So it'll be interesting to see if he lands with the Mets, because if he does, that saves the savior that is Mark Vientos.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's I'm running out of gas here, brother.
It's okay. We'll wrap it there, right? We're about an hour and a half. So everybody, thank you so much. I'll let Doc close out the show, and I will see you next week.
Whoa. This is the kind of show that's so classic. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. And don't forget, I'm your Huckleberry.